Hi, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, providing tips on language learning, culture, and human development. And today, our broadcast is going to be talking about the changing face of language education around the world. And one of the things that I think so many of us have been impacted by is the COVID-19, the pandemic that has swept the world. And I think teachers are struggling and wrestling with the future of education and what it will look like starting now and into the fall. And I know our guest today will be talking about those issues, especially. And I think over the past 5-6 months, many classes around the world have gone online with language instruction, but in other parts of the world, it seems that restrictions are opening up. Where in the past, maybe classes have gone completely online. Maybe some institutions are resuming face-to-face instruction with certain safety measures in place, while others are continuing to go online, to remain online. And then other institutions are trying to figure out a hybrid model of language instruction where you have a combination of face-to-face versus online education. And still others are trying to figure that out. And we're interested today in hearing your voice on this important topic. But no matter what the case, I think the emotional, psychological, and economic costs have been just staggering, especially for teachers and parents and institutions where they're trying to juggle. It's like juggling, 10 watermelons at the same time, your own personal life. But I think what we've discovered is that all of us do not work in a vacuum, and that as a very social creature, we thrive on human connection. We yearn to be connected with people around the world. And I think the collective momentum and motivation of all of us is what keeps us moving forward. Let's see who has also joined us before we get to the regular broadcast. Roquette from Bolivia, thank you very much. We have another Fatma from Canada, proud of you. Riyadh, you have a fan that is joining you as well. We have other people, Alfredo from Quito, Bolivia, Isra from Tunisia, great to see you. Miriam from Tunisia as well. We have a lot of different guests, again, Habib from Tunisia, and so forth. So we're grateful for all of you that are joining into the broadcast today. That's one of the things that makes this so exciting. So what we like to do is that in order to support people, and again, throughout this broadcast, we're interested in hearing your voice on this topic. And the topic being today is the changing face of language education around the world in such difficult situations. Well, in order to support you, I've organized this broadcast with two very insightful teachers from around the world. And when we think of insightful, we think about the different voices. We have one teacher from Tunisia and another teacher from Costa Rica. And one of the goals that we have today is to bring their voices in to our conversation in one unified voice to educate and support teachers around the world. And we'll try to tap into their collective experience, their wisdom also, and how it is relevant to everyone's voice out there. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to bring in the two voices today. We have Kaylor Vargas from Costa Rica, and also we have Riyad Kuba from Tunisia. Welcome to the episode today.
Thank you very much, Randall. For me, it's a pleasure to be here, and let's hope that this interaction is going to be insightful for everybody.
Great, and it's great to have both of you on today. Let's see.
Thank you so much, Randall, for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Riyad. Thank you, Kaylor. We have some other voices from Colombia. We have some more voices from Tunisia. Mohammed, great. And again, we'll certainly try to acknowledge as many people as we can. during our particular broadcast today. So that is great. Just so people understand what we'll be covering today, we're going to be doing some introductions, getting to know Kayla and Riyadh a little bit better before we jump into the broadcast. We're going to talk about the impact of COVID on teaching and language learning. We'll talk about safety measures implemented by teachers, by schools and governments. And of course, what we want to do, and Kayla and Riyadh know, we want to hear your voices on these topics. We'll talk about methods and tools that teachers have been using. I'll talk a little bit about parent, teacher, and students' responses to it. And we've had a couple of broadcasts up to this point to talk about some of these issues, but we're also looking forward to the future as well. We'll talk about gains and losses as a result of this new learning environment. We'll talk a little bit about the future, whether it's just face-to-face, whether we're looking at online, and whether we're looking at hybrid methods of instruction. We'll also talk about changes to our own instructions and teaching methodologies, and then we're going to talk about some closing and final comments to that. So we're going to go in that method. We see some more. Sonia from Tunisia. We have someone from New Jersey as well. And Ale Vargas, congratulations, Kayla. Perhaps someone is joining in us as well. Well, let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with some of these introductions so that we get to know both of you a little bit better. And we're going to start with that. So we're going to first start with Riyadh. If you could share just a little bit about Tunisia so that people get to know you and a little bit about your school.
Okay, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to go live with you in this episode, and I hope it's going to be interesting for our audience. Let me tell you something about Tunisia. I have a couple of friends from different countries, and when I tell them that I am from Tunisia, they always hear that I am from Indonesia. So there is a difference here between Tunisia and Indonesia. So again, I'm from Tunisia.
Very different, right?
Exactly, yes. Which is one of the smallest African countries, bordered by the Mediterranean Sea to the north. And it's although it's a small country, but it's really rich in history. It's a country of 3,000 years of history. It's spectacular. It's fun. And it has always been an interesting destination for many celebrities like Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, who gave concerts here in Tunisia. So based on the pictures, if you're looking for history, if you're looking for beautiful beaches and amazing attractions, so of course this Mediterranean Sea, which is Tunisia country, is the perfect place to be.
Great.
So
thank you very much, Riyadh, for that. And just briefly a little bit about where you teach.
Actually, I work at a government-run rural school located approximately around 40 kilometers away from downtown, where I live here in Sfax. The students' ages range from 15 to 19 years old, and starting from the second year, students major in different fields like economics, maths, science, sports, and or arts. And 3 years later, they sit for a national exam, let's say, which is called the baccalaureate exam, which marks the end of their high school studies to go on later on to college education and studies.
Okay. And when is it, just briefly, when is the school year begin and end?
It starts on September the 15th and it ends by the end of June, let's say.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Riyadh. We're going to bring you back in a few minutes to continue our discussion on some of these issues. So thank you for joining. Why don't we go ahead and bring Kayla? Why don't we go ahead and just talk a little bit about Costa Rica and a little bit about, just like Riyadh did, and a little bit about your school.
Yes, sure. Costa Rica, well, it is a small country. It's located in Central America here on the Americas. Costa Rica is known internationally, especially for its nature. We got a lot of pretty beaches. We got different volcanoes, a lot of wild animals. Costa Rica includes 6.5% of all the biodiversity around the world. So we are so little, but we have 6.5% of all the biodiversity. That's a lot. We not only have nature here in Costa Rica, we also got cities like San Jose, Heredia, Alajuela. We got many companies that work in the technological field, business processing outsourcing companies like Amazon, Intel, that they deliver their products to other parts of the world. Our educational system, it is really good here, one of the best in Latin America. And we are also proud of the healthcare system, especially during these times of the pandemic here in Costa Rica.
Okay.
About the high school that I teach in a high school. The name is Jose Figueres Ferrer. Mr. Figueres was a former president of Costa Rica. He was a 3 times president. He's so important for the history of this country because he abolished the army in 1948. So since 1948, Costa Rica was one of the first countries to eliminate the army, to abolish the army. And therefore, we live in a very peaceful country. And that's something that all of the Ticos are proud of. We always are proud of the pura vida, right? Pure life here in Costa Rica. That's like our slogan.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time to share a little bit about your countries and so forth, because I think it's important for people to know that Tunisia and Costa Rica are countries of diversity. But yet, as we're going to be talking today, we're unified in the idea of supporting one another in such difficult situations. Let's go ahead and just take a look at some other comments that we just have some other. Miriam from Tunisia has joined in. We have another hi. Again, if I don't always pronounce your name correctly, please let me know. Greetings from Colombia. Wow, we have a lot of guests joining us. Another from Colombia. And so forth. Well, a lot of guests that are watching and participating in this event today, and we're really excited about that. Well, let's go ahead and actually get into our discussion for today. And we've done the introductions, but let's just talk a little bit about the impact that COVID-19 has had on teaching and learning. We're going to go into more specifics, but let's go ahead and start with Riyadh. Just over the last several months, give us a general idea of the impact that it's had on your teaching, and then we'll jump over to Kaylor as well. During the presentation, of course, everyone, because this is a joint effort, feel free to share your own comments, because Kaylor and I and Riyadh want to hear your voices as well. So Riyadh, go ahead and share.
So we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected educational systems around the world, and our country, Tunisia, is not exempt from that too. So the pandemic's impact on our country was enormous on all students, and especially on the baccalaureate students who sat for the national exam, and they were off for several weeks. Exactly around 88 days to be more specific. So the government had to close all educational institutions and canceled all examinations except for 3 categories of students who are primary school students, prep school students, and baccalaureate students, because they had to sit for national exams. But when it comes to assessment, and here I want to talk about the assessment phase, especially for baccalaureate students. They were supposed to sit for exams in the 3rd term of the school year, so that they could get ready for the national exam. But due to this pandemic, when we returned to school, we just returned to cover the program and to finish all the lessons and the modules. So here the students were deprived of the opportunity to be assessed and to be evaluated. And after the release of the results, we saw a considerable drop in the percentages of success and compared to the previous years, which clearly proved that this pandemic has negatively affected the students' performances.
And that would certainly be difficult, especially when people have different expectations and hopes. Kaylor, what about you? What about Costa Rica and your situation in specific?
Yeah, sure. Well, here I teach in a technical high school. high school prepares students for like technical fields. Like in the future, when they finish the high school, they're going to be working for companies. Okay, they have that option. How has it been affected? Well, the senior students, they're supposed to finish in August. They were supposed to finish in August, of course. But because of this situation, like classes, regular classes, they were suspended on March the 16th. So everything had to go online. We all teachers had to juggle in order to, build up a platform and everything so we could start working with our students. And as I said, the senior students have been the ones that are more affected because of many companies that are closing. Many of them are not going to have the opportunity to do their practicum, right? Their professional practices in the companies. So some of them are going to have to do projects and things like that. The exams, the standardized tests were canceled as well, just like in Tunisia. Here in not in Tunisia, they were not canceled, but here in Costa Rica, they were canceled. So they're not having that standardized test that they take at the end of the school year, just like the previous students. It has affected a lot of students and teachers as well, so as the economy here in Costa Rica.
Now, let me ask you, and I would like to hear some other voices as well. I mean, when you were told to go online, and again, we're going to open this up to Riyadh, to Kaylor, to everyone, did you feel, I'm ready, I can handle this? Or did it cause a certain level of stress and anxiety in your life?
Well, my case, to be honest, it didn't. What really, the struggle that I always have is with the administrative part, filling out all the paperwork and stuff like that. But teaching, for me, it's great. Here online, with the students that have connection, it's always great. The situation here is that I can say that about 50% of my students don't have access to internet or a good internet connection. They don't have like devices like computers and cell phones. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to continue with the teaching course, to continue with all the classes, right? Because they don't have access to these tools. Right. It's difficult. We have to send them the written material, and therefore there are going to be delays on their educational process. Those are some of the situations that we have faced, right? But like being scared of technology, not really, because I've been working with technology for many years and I've taken many courses about it. But yeah, that's the part that we had some struggles with.
And I think you made a really important point there. You're saying that many of your students, maybe 50% at times, don't have access to internet or a reliable internet connection. And so in those cases, you can't just throw technology at students, but you need to recognize not only in Costa Rica or in certain parts, but I'm guessing in many parts of the world where the idea of just use Zoom or use technology might not be possible in certain situations. So I think that's a really relevant point. Riyadh, any other comment on that?
Personally, I was kind of ready to go through this endeavor of giving online lessons, but the problem was with the students because they were not familiar with this opportunity. So the most effective tools I have found useful and practical in carrying on my teaching was Facebook and YouTube. So since I taught baccalaureate students, so I had to do something to keep them a little busy. So the first thing I did was that I created a Facebook group where I gathered students from different cities, and I created some online lessons for the students to follow. And the challenge that I faced at that time was convincing students to follow these online lessons. At first, they didn't really react, and I didn't have like many views. But later on, as the government extended the let's say the lockdown, so students have become became more aware of the effectiveness, let's say, of these online lessons. But there was also another problem, Although most of the videos contained post-stage activities, and most of the videos there was like activities and exercises, and they offered free services to correct their assignments. Still, the problem of the face-to-face interaction was lacking, and I had to resort to arranging some Zoom and Microsoft Teams meetings in order to explain these activities and the feedback I was giving to these students. So the problem here of the lack of interaction and the communication.
Yeah, and I think both of you sound very confident in being able to adapt and providing training for your students. I know for me personally, I was told on a Thursday, oh, next Tuesday, everything is going online. And for me, I felt some uncertainty because I really, although I do a lot with online learning, it was the type of environment and expectation and meeting the needs of students that I think was really difficult, at least in the beginning. Let's take a look at, see if we have some other comments so far. Someone says, scared to go online in Tunisia. Well, maybe some people feel a little uncertain. Not only students, but I think teachers as well. Senda says, I'm a teacher and we stopped teaching since the beginning of March. We had no contact with our students, especially from that date. I tried to start teaching, online teaching, but that was not successful because it was the first time I started teaching online. This was my first experience with remote learning. And I really appreciate that vulnerability to acknowledge, this is something that was brand new to me. And I think we all feel that in a certain way. Another comment, developing countries struggle mainly with the lack of technological devices and tools. Kaylor, you mentioned a little bit about some areas of only having 50%. And I mean, we could talk about the number of students. Let's say, imagine that you have 50 students in your class, but limited technology. Here's another one, Sonia. And Sonia, please let us know where you're writing from. The majority of teachers were not trained. I'd like to hear where that was. Rita says, to teach online requires reschedule of teaching timetables according to students' levels. Being computer literate is new to some students, and I think teachers. The need for good internet connection is also another issue due to the area coverage. You mentioned that, Kaylor. What about Riyadh? Are there issues with internet coverage that can be a challenge as well?
Exactly, yes. Since I have the opportunity, or I teach in a rural school, and I live in the city. So most of the students who live here in the city had internet access, and they were able to follow all of these lessons. But unfortunately, for those who live in a rural area, let's say, they were not able because of probably the coverage of the internet, and probably because of some other reasons. So they were not. They didn't have.
How do you get those lessons out to students, and how do you? I'm sure that many students and parents feel, I'm falling behind. I'm falling behind. I'm not able to keep up, and that extra stressor comes up. Let's see who else we have. We have Priscilla says, hello, I never forgot your classes. Well, good to have you with us. Fatma says, in Tunisia, I'm sure that students are motivated. However, the bad speed and quality of the internet is a big issue, and that could be in different areas where you might be. Maisa says from the UAE, we're really ready to use technology because in higher grades, we usually use Google Classes to connect with students. But the new thing for them was using other technologies such as Microsoft Teams, being online with students. And I know, Kaylor, you've used Microsoft Teams. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. This is the platform that the Ministry of Education has provided teachers and students. So all the teachers have access to Microsoft Teams to teach the classes. It's a very complete tool for teaching, because you can there's a section for assignments, you can program activities, you can program classes. Zoom is more like for doing conferences, and you can share the screen and stuff like that. But we have those other features own Microsoft Teams that allow a teacher to make it more like a classroom, right? We have different features, as I mentioned before, um, to bring in students. We can share the documents there, check the document that is going to send us student a message. They will let them know that their work was corrected,
Yep.
and it keeps all that, just like,
Now,
it,
Kayla, I'm going to jump in here for a moment. I see Mona says, I hated my first time with online teaching. And I think what you're mentioning is on whether you're using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, some of these platforms have 20,000 different features, but teachers only need 2 or 3. And that's that balancing of people and teachers not feeling overwhelmed as well. Senda says, thanks to collaboration and teamwork, we've been able to have a series of training for English teachers. We've been able to learn much about remote learning. Really good points. Mona says, I'm falling behind. I felt like I fell alone like students, but later things got better. I used Zoom. So I think the idea of using different technologies is wonderful, but keeping in mind that the struggles teachers have. It's not easy. As Zainab says, it's not easy to teach online. Before that, teachers need to maybe be clarified to do that, maybe supported as well. We have a lot of comments coming in. I do use email as a method to send teaching materials to my students. So that could be another way of using that. Another one, in Tunisia, public schools lack technology equipment, especially for language teaching. During the lockdown, we found huge problems to teach online. I set up groups with my students through Messenger. That was most that we could do. So great comments. And I think we're getting a sense of some of the challenges and frustrations that people have. Well, let's go into, and we're really happy. And again, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab with Kaylor and also from Riyadh. And we're talking a little bit about some of the development, some of the tools, some of our experiences during this difficult time. So why don't we look just briefly at some of the projects that we have been working on and maybe how this would be relevant to other teachers as well. So Riyadh, I'm just going to bring you in here and to talk. We're talking about different places around the world, but do you mind just sharing a little bit about a couple of the projects that you've been doing and how this would be relevant to other teachers? And then we'll bring back in Kaylor to talk about some projects as well. And again, feel free, if you're a visitor, sharing some of the experiences that you've had or other tools that you've been using. So go ahead, Riyadh.
Yes, the picture on the left is the Facebook group that I created for all Tunisian baccalaureate students. So that was the first step in order to gather as many students as possible so that I can also reach as many students as possible. And then the second picture on the right is my YouTube channel. So at first, because baccalaureate students had to stay at home, and so I wanted to keep them a little busy and try to help them not to lose track of their education and studies. So I created online lessons for the last module, which was very important for them to be able to cover and finish all the program. So every 2 days, let's say, I upload a new lesson and which contains some activities at the end. That was the first step. I tried to finish all the lessons of the last module, and then I created some other videos in which I gave them some tips and tricks on how to maximize their chances of getting good grades, and some other videos about how to deal with some language exercises or things that most of the students have a problem with. So that was probably the project that I worked on during the lockdown.
This is really relevant, I think, to many people. I mean, when you're creating videos like this, you don't need really high-end cameras, expensive microphones. I think that these are the type of activities that many people could do. And Riyadh, I think this is a really good example of trying to connect with your students in a way that maybe they're not able to connect with you in the classroom as well.
I was just using a cell phone, so all it needs
a cell phone and probably some good lighting, and that's it.
That's it. And I think one of the things that we're trying to point out, both you and Kaylor, and this is one of the quotes that I found in one of your videos. It says, the most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. And thank you for sharing some of those ideas with us. I think those are great examples. Let's bring on Kaylor to talk a little bit about one of the projects, at least that you've been working on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Well, since there are many students that are working from home, they don't have access to internet, we need to send them some self-study guides. Those self-study guides contain all of the instructions, all of the activities, the steps they have to follow in order to do the activities without the need of a teacher, okay? Because we're not going to be there present.
Right.
In the same self-autonomous guide or self-study guides, I include resources like this for the students who have access to the internet and have access to devices, such as Genially. Genially is a really good tool that I have found to create some interactive and engaging presentations. Here, it's like they access this tool and they can just go with the flow, right? They follow the presentation. I write in there what they have to do. If I put on a hyperlink, they can just click on it and go and do the next activity. This can take students to different platforms and places such as YouTube. They can check Facebook posts. They can go to Microsoft Forms. They can, this will take them to different places. Not only this tool, not only stay here, but also go to different places. And I think this is a more appealable platform or program than just Microsoft PowerPoint, because
right. And I think one of the things that people can't capture, we're just showing a still image on the screen right here. But what we can do is we can share after the broadcast, share a link to this presentation, because people, when they see it, it's very interactive. I mean, it contains so many interactive elements that teachers and students can do. And so if with Riyadh, with the Facebook, and with the YouTube channel and with this presentation, we can share that in the notes after the presentation so people can actually see what this does. So I think that is a really great idea. So let's bring back Riyadh a little bit. Let's see some of the other comments that have come in. We have a lot of different comments here. We'll try to do as many as we can. Elizabeth says, being able to create online content and manage social networks is not the same as actually teaching online. I found the learning curve steep, especially getting students from abroad. And I think that's really important. There's one thing to create YouTube videos and other activities, but then implementing it. And I'm sure we would have ideas on how to implement those into the classroom. But I think that is a really good point regarding that. Another question is the hardest time of COVID in Thailand. Great to hear someone from Thailand. Is the government provided the on-air channels on TV called distance learning so Thai students can learn from home? I think that's, and I know I've heard from a teacher from Mexico as well, is that the government is pushing out content that is made accessible to students as well. Another comment, to what extent going online is equitable? And I think if I'm understanding the question could be when you're dealing with students, both in low resource environments. You mentioned, Kaylor, with students that are in areas, and perhaps the same thing in Tunisia, where some students have access to high-speed internet and computers, but others do not. How can that be an equitable experience for them? Another question is, do teachers have the required expertise to deal with this type of new online learning? And real quickly, with that idea of having expertise, Kaylor and Riyadh, what types of activities are your own institutions, again, briefly, are your institutions doing to providing training, meaningful training to teachers?
Well, to be honest, I would say that the training provided by the Ministry of Education hasn't been something that is going to provide us with a lot of tools and different expertise that we're supposed to get. So I think that exploring the different tools that we have available, talking to other colleagues, watching even YouTube videos to learn about some different tools all of these things have helped us improve. Because to be honest, none of this training, they call it training, but that is not a training. It's just like, okay, we have this tool you can use, and good luck. It's basically it. We don't have like time to be on training and teach students and send reports and do, and you know, I'm a teacher 24/7. Saturdays, Sundays, the students are sending me material through WhatsApp, email, all different platforms. I had to give them my personal WhatsApp number because that was the only tool that they had to reach me, to send me evidences of their work, to ask me questions. There was no other option. So the high school is in a rural area. Many people live in rural communities with no access to internet. Even the telephone connection is very, very low, right? They like some people have to walk some distance to get like some signal to even have like phone service.
And these are all, I think, important things. I think a lot of teachers feel that they've been thrown into the lion's den, right? Here you are, here are some tools, good luck. And I think what we're trying to do today, at least, is one example of giving teachers voice to learn together. Riyadh, any comment on that about training?
Actually, I discussed it with some officials and especially with my inspector, who said or who told me that the new trend now is going to provide the teachers with such type of training. So because it has become more than necessary. So probably because this was something new this year, so we were not ready and we were not used to such a type of learning. But probably next year, teachers and inspectors will go through this type of experience and will provide us with probably more training sessions about these online learning, let's say.
And I think these are all important. I think for me as a teacher, I want to look good. In other words, I want to look good in front of my students. I want to make sure that I'm presenting content that is meaningful to them. And I think just as human beings, we want to make sure that we're representing ourselves and the language and teaching the best we can. Let's see some other comments. Wow, there's a lot of comments coming in. Research and training could dig deeper into online learning to get more insights in this type of learning. And one of the things I want to, I think, bring right now is this is a particular book that I'm reading right now. It's called Blended: Using Disruptive Innovation to Improve Schools. This is something I picked up off Amazon. And it's not only talking about hybrid learning, but it's introducing the concept of disruptive learning and disruptive innovation, where it goes far beyond the basic principles. And I think being aware of what resources out there might be useful to others. Rita says, great sharing, Riyadh. Thank you. Another comment says, my experience with online teaching was limited to messenger group discussions. Is that what you were saying, Kayla? You were using Messenger, or Riyadh?
No, actually, I didn't do it like that. I mean, it's because the students that don't have access to like internet, or their connection is really bad and they live in rural areas, they can't do all of these activities online. So what they do is that we send them the written material, or we send them the like the guides through WhatsApp. So they can do everything on their phone, or they do everything on their notebook or on the paper that we send them. And then they send us back the evidences of their work, that they're working. They need to send us evidence that they're working. And in that way, we can give them feedback. but that's all through like WhatsApp. There's some like a group of students who that's the only tool that they have, WhatsApp. So I communicate a lot with many of them. Some others use Microsoft Teams all the time. They upload everything because they have access. Some of them send my work email. Some of them send it to my personal email. So, you know, I had to open a lot of different places so I could reach out to more students.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to be able, I think both of you probably do this very well, of opening up different possibilities for students in high resource environments and low resource environments. And this kind of leads into what I want to talk about, the gains and losses. What have teachers gained and lost from this type of online environment? And I think that none of us would minimize the global impact on the loss of life, economic stability that has impacted others. And I think that many teachers are finding in the midst of all of these gains and losses. And we're going to ask Riyadh in a minute to chime in on this, but I want to introduce this with a comment from Maisa. She says, the good thing about the pandemic is that it helps students and teachers to learn more and search more to improve their online skills. Teachers got to know more applications and tools for conducting exams and quizzes. Students were more curious to improve their skills so that they can connect well with their teachers and friends during online classes. So Riyadh, in connection with this gains and losses, what have been your experiences? Things that you've gained and maybe some things that have been affected by it.
Actually, I agree with Mesa's comment, which says that this pandemic was a great opportunity for teachers to improve their online skills. And one of the things I've learned during this pandemic is what we call this flipped classroom. It's a type of blended learning which focuses on students' engagement and active learning. In the flipped classroom here, students watch online videos, collaborate with each other, and conduct discussions, and while engaging in classroom concepts with the monitor's guidance. During this pandemic, many of my school students who followed my online lessons, after returning to school, I noticed that their participation, their engagement, and their concentration increased a lot, and they were active and they participated a lot. So I think that this is one of the things that I've learned and gained, and I think next year I'm going to go through this experience, which is called Flipped Classroom. I'm going to prepare some lessons before the lesson, and then of course this will improve the quality of the students' level in general.
Good points. And anyone else, Kayla, we're going to turn the time over to you in a second, but anyone else, things that you've learned, something that you've gained, something that you felt you've lost that you're trying to reestablish, we'd be interested in hearing from you. Thank you, Riyadh. Kayla, any thoughts on that? Anything that you've gained or felt that you've lost as a result?
Oh, yes, of course, the use of all of these technological tools, it's always something that you can gain. And the students as well. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a student who, in the class, she was always participating and doing activities and giving opinions. And like he disappeared on the online classes at the beginning. And well, part of the things that a teacher has to do is like try to show empathy to the students and try to contact them and ask them what's going on. And he told me that he really hated this new type of learning because he prefers the social interaction. And well, how did I motivate him? I told him, well, you know, this pandemic has given you, your generation, because he's in senior year, this pandemic has given your generation the opportunity to learn about all of these technological tools and to master them and to be even readier for work than the previous generations, because their specialty, the specialty that I'm teaching is about customer service. It's service center executives. They're going to be working in the outsourcing business like call centers and, well, any outsourcing company that comes here in Costa Rica. So I told him, like, you are more than ready. You are readier than the previous generations to start working. That's
All right.
something that we have all gained, all of these tools.
All right. Great ideas. I think those are the types of things that we're interested in hearing. A couple of others. Sonia says teachers started to look for developing their skills through trying to use new technologies, experimenting. No one wants to fail, but I think that if we sometimes step into some discomfort, try new things. Kayla, you mentioned about, hey, you're learning new tools that we didn't know about. Is certainly important. Alim says, lose the real physical contact. I think of contacting, seeing people face to face is something that I think many people have lost. Mona mentions in Tunisia, the Ministry of Education is not providing any platform for online learning. It's high time for ministry to look at the issue more seriously. The pandemic is not about to finish soon. So the idea is that maybe many teachers sometimes have to take the lead in doing many of these. Isra from the UAE says, all students these days prefer to learn new things. Kayla, you mentioned about learning new things. They're familiar with online platforms. Mesa says, the gains outweigh the losses, but the greatest loss was being with students in person and observing their facial expressions and hearing their laughs. So losing that connection of seeing facial expressions, I think is so, so important. Sonia says, Tunisia Virtual University is using online teaching for many years now. And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to recognize some of the challenges. Elizabeth says, WhatsApp has been tremendous, helpful for low levels, and students may be working with bare technology. Another comment is, I think that many teachers, especially English and ICT teachers in Tunisia, are now familiar with online teaching and are equipped now. And I think what we're trying to say is, another one, Fatma says, in some cases, we find a gap between teachers and tools. So all of these are excellent comments on the idea of trying to balance out, look, this is the future. What can we do to adapt? We're now closing out a little bit of our broadcast, but we want to end with some final thoughts. And number one, Kayla, we'll start with you. What does the future hold for what you see in the future in Costa Rica, maybe on your own institution, but the broader country, face-to-face, online only, or a hybrid? Let's say over the next 6 months, and then we'll hear from you, Riyadh, and anyone else. We're happy. We'd like to hear from different places around the world. What is it going to look like over the next 6 months?
Mm-hmm. So based on my prediction, how this situation with COVID-19 has been, going through here in Costa Rica, I think we're going to be like online. Online is the only option we have right now. We're on the second wave, and this wave has been riskier for all the students and families, and of course teachers as well. So returning to classes is not an option. We were first going to return to class after Holy Week, Easter time, and then they moved it to the midterm vacations, which were the first 2 weeks in July, and they had to move it because of the second wave as well. Now they're planning to return in September, but the cases have been increasing. So based on the situation, I predict that we will not have classes this year, like physical classes, because of all the situations. Many parents are going to be scared as well, and I'm a parent too. So are they willing to send their students to these classes with all the risk that involves? Many of them have economical problems because of the losses of jobs. Many of them have people with cancer at home, with different diseases, and that it's a risk for everybody, right?
Yeah, great points there. What about Riyadh? What do you predict? What is it going to be? What is it going to look like over the next 4, 5, 6 months?
Well, I don't think our school or teaching will change in the future, at least in the short term, because this is a big project and it requires enormous financial resources and training sessions for educators to be prepared. So I think we will continue with the traditional face-to-face classes. And even now, with the second wave of the COVID-19 here in Tunisia, officials are still talking about that students will be returning to school in the same conditions. So it's 100% face-to-face conventional type of learning.
Okay, great. Let's see what other comments, if we have comments from others. Let's see here. Teachers started to look for developing their skills, trying new things. I think we saw that. We saw losing contact. Another comment, online teaching has made me learn more about technology. It made me more motivated. Of course, teachers' creativity makes students motivated. So if teachers are motivated, students are motivated. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a teacher saying, I'm uncertain. This is new to me. It's sometimes confusing, and to validate that students have those feelings as well. Mohammed says, I don't think things will change a lot in Tunisia as authorities aren't prepared or planning for anything related to online teaching. Oh, I think we might have read that before. Another comment, we should be optimistic at the same time. We should be prepared for the unexpected, I think is important for us to think about. Another comment, I think that being an online teacher is self-development process that people develop over time. You don't need to wait for the winds of change. So don't wait for change to happen. Always be ready. I often think of teachers being what I call very chameleonic, like that lizard that changes colors, and teachers can do the same. And so those are great ideas for us. Well, let's go ahead and close out our program today. And my thought is to both of you, final comments or advice. And what advice do you have for teachers or people who see an uncertain future in the teaching profession? Either teachers right now are uncertain about the future. Should they stay in the profession? Should they change? And for new teachers who are studying to become teachers, but are not sure of what is ahead.
Well, I will start if that's not a problem. In my case, I will tell teachers, stay where you are. Remember that at this moment with the pandemic, we don't have a lot of different job opportunities, right? If teaching is what you love, continue teaching. And for the students that are starting to be a teacher, if that's what you want, excellent. And my advice will be to get involved into these technologies, into these tools, because now many organizations, many companies, many institutions are moving to this type of learning, this type of teaching. Online teaching is the present, and I'm sure it's going to be the future for many years now. This has come not only for just like a pandemic, this has come for staying longer. Just like Isaac Asimov, he used to say in the story, the fun they had, he was predicting all of this back in the 1950s. So I'm pretty sure this is the present and future of education.
Great. Thank you, Kailar. Riyadh.
Well, my advice to people who are uncertain or see an uncertain future in the teaching profession is, I would say, it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared. So I think we have to be prepared when the opportunity presents itself, and now it's the time to get ready for the future, because life presents us with limited windows of opportunity. So some of them or some of the windows may never come again, while others may come once in a lifetime. So if we are not ready at the moment the opportunity presents itself, we will definitely have to bite the bullets and accept it as a missed opportunity. So we can create from a difficult situation an opportunity that can change our lives.
Excellent. And you know, when we think about it, Kailar and Riyadh, how long have we known each other, the three of us?
1 month.
Oh, yeah, just a little over a month and a half.
Yeah, like 2 months.
Maybe 2 months. But what is exciting to me is that when we feel there's a loss of the traditional face-to-face opportunities to meet one another, we, the three of us and many others, are meeting and establishing new online communities where we can share ideas, where we can be a unified voice for people who are struggling. And as we share together, I think we create new friendships, we create new connections, we create new support. And that's what's so exciting. Let's see some final comments that are coming in. A comment, I totally agree with you, Riyadh. Someone is talking about the comments that you've mentioned. Exactly. Teachers need to rely on themselves and try to be lifelong learners. And I think lifelong collaborators, because none of us work in a vacuum. I find great enrichment by working with you two and sharing ideas. A couple of ideas that, wow, we got a lot coming in. Another one for me, online courses is preliminary training for students because they will submit scientific papers in the future. Another way of getting students involved. Another comment, I think that being an online teacher is self-development process. We've seen that comment. I remember that. Kaylor from Gretel. Kaylor is a great teacher. He's always working hard for his students to motivate them, to help students see their potential. He goes beyond the content. He cares about the human part of students. And despite their adversity, they are motivated and fight. So you have someone who is in your corner there, Kaylor. Rita says, thanks for sharing, Kaylor. Another comment, Kahoot, Slide.com, Padlets, or other resources that can be used. Lorena says, in Spain, publishing companies helped opening up platforms. We had online books. It is hard not to be face-to-face with students, and that is certainly important. I hope I can participate with you in the upcoming webinars. And absolutely, just like with Kaylor and Riyadh, we've only been friends for a month or two, but I think these type of connections can reach out to people more. A very useful webinar. Thanks for all the participating members. And that's what I think, Riyadh and Kaylor, when we do something like this live, the only benefit of doing something live is that we hear your voices, that we can recognize, that you're allowed to participate. Otherwise, you would just watch the recorded version later on. Providing more online training is crucial so that more teachers can go through online training as successful. And Mesa says, thank you, Riyadh and Kaylor, for sharing your ideas. And Rita says, the teaching profession is a noble thing because a teacher produces other professional people such as doctors, lawyers, and scientists and frontliners. And I think that would probably be a great place to end this broadcast. So I want to thank both of you, Kaylor, Riyadh, for sharing your expertise, for being a part of this online community. And thank you once again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been really, really great to chat with you two and share some of our ideas and our reality here in Costa Rica. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you again. What we'd like to do is to end the broadcast today. Thanks you once again. A couple of reminders of upcoming events. We have, first of all, this coming Saturday, I might have a couple of slots available for participants. That is the Teacher Swap Shop. Take a look at that. That's where we get together in Zoom and teachers can share their ideas. Take a look at that on Facebook. I'm also going to ask Kaylor, before I forget, and Riyadh, in the show notes, we're going to make sure that you're aware of that project that Kaylor created and also Riyadh's YouTube channel. And this coming Sunday, another presentation on religion in the classroom and how to show deep respect, how to show great empathy and understanding to those who have different faith traditions. We want to thank you once again. Feel free to share additional comments after the broadcast, and we look forward to your participation. Also, one last thing. On my website, esl-lab.com, there is a link at the top in the middle of the page where I'm doing free consultations during this next week. If any of you take a look at my website, you can set up an appointment to visit with me. Share your ideas, share your frustrations, share your questions, and I'm happy to meet with you according to a schedule that I have. Feel free to participate in that as well. So thank you very much for joining the broadcast, and we look forward to seeing you in a future one as well. We see a number of comments coming in. Just thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Kalar and Randall. Thank you very much. It's been a fantastic meeting from Mona. And again, we appreciate all of the thanks. And again, we look forward to visiting with you in a future broadcast. And if you would like to be part of something like this, please share your voice and contact me again. Thank you very much. Until the next visit.